Happy Thursday. Just confirming that I can hear the sound. Um, Today, you guys see the hat? It's Let's Talk About Epilepsy Day. So I think that's kind of the iconography now that we have going for today. But basically, today you guys were here for National Epilepsy Awareness Month. As you guys all know, when we talked with OCCC Cool Boy on Monday, we are in the midst of our month-long National Epilepsy Awareness Month campaign. So far for Game Over Epilepsy, we raised almost $9,000 to support the Epilepsy Foundation in the month of November, which is amazing. So thank you all for your support. A big part of National Epilepsy Awareness Month, as you all know, was talking about epilepsy and getting more of our Let's Talk About Epilepsy chats out there to educate people about epilepsy, about seizures, and about what we do at the Epilepsy Foundation. So first and foremost, this one has been a long time in the making. Laura has been a great sport and patient with me. We had this one scheduled, gosh, it was like August, and I was having sound difficulties, and then we rescheduled another time. And so, third time's the charm, and we're finally here to talk about advocacy. Without further ado, I think we can jump in. And again, if you guys have questions for Laura, please put them in the chat. I'd be happy to propose them to her as she's chatting. And obviously, too, if you have anything to add to the conversation about what you do with advocacy, what have you, please let me know. I think this is also a great segue from our conversation with Cool Boy on Monday because he used to be a part of Kids Speak Up and Metropolitan New York affiliate. So, Laura, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to be with you today. I'm Laura Weidner. I'm Vice President of Government Relations and Advocacy for the Epilepsy Foundation. What that actually means, like position titles only mean so much. So I oversee all of the government relations and policy work that the foundation does at both the federal level and in all of the states. I also oversee our grassroots engagement. So all of our advocacy volunteers across the country who are willing to share their stories and connect with elected officials about the issues that we're working on. And then the last part of the work that I oversee is our Gene Carpenter Legal Defense Fund, which is basically one staff person who serves a very important role and helps people with epilepsy or their family members in situations where they think they're facing epilepsy-related discrimination, say in the workplace, in schools, getting access to the care they need. And she educates them about their rights and helps connect them to resources to help navigate the situation that they're working through. So that's my job. I'm very fortunate to have it. It's very exciting and get to work with a lot of great people, both at the foundation and externally in our volunteers.
Seriously, so that's all she does. But you guys, I feel like our advocacy efforts, they're not as like widely known, and especially the resources at hand. I one time was just speaking with Laura and Allison Nickel, another fellow colleague, about our advocacy efforts, and I was blown away by the resources that they offer to our community. So I've put the link in the chat, or you can see on epilepsy.com more about just kind of generally what we do with advocacy. But seriously, if you guys ever have questions or, basically on the items that Laura mentioned earlier, please reach out because I'd be happy to connect you guys and make sure that you have the support that you need. Of course, too, our helpline is a great first stop as well. They'll be able to direct you to the correct people. Again, I just put that information in chat. So I am really excited about this chat because there's a lot that also I don't even know that I am looking forward to learning more about because Laura is really the go-to one-stop shop for all things epilepsy advocacy. It's pretty incredible. So, Laura, outside of what you do at EF, what other roles do you hold? So obviously you work with a lot of other orgs.
Yeah, we do. So EF, the foundation, we go up to the Hill and up to state legislature, sometimes on our own. That obviously tends to be when our issues are more epilepsy specific. But a lot of the issues that we work on, people with other conditions or disabilities, while they have some unique characteristics, there are also a lot of the same challenges that different populations share. So we do a lot of work with other disability and patient organizations. We call this our coalition work. So honestly, a lot of our time is spent in meetings with, say, the American Heart Association or the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation or the American Association for Persons with Disabilities. And in those meetings, we're like strategizing about what we're all working on, policies that we want to get enacted, and how we can work on those together. Alongside and somewhat outside of my specific role at EF, I also chair the biggest disability coalition, advocacy coalition in the country. It's called the Consortium for Citizens with Disabilities. And I sit on a few other steering committees, one of essentially the patient groups. They banded together, particularly in 2017, when the Affordable Care Act was under significant threat. And then there are a few other coalitions, like one that focuses on long-term care, for instance, one that focuses on medication coverage and Medicare Part D. So things get a little more specific. We spend the bulk of our coalition time, again, working with the broader disability community and then the broader patient community, as much as I dislike that P word, but other conditions and diseases that people have.
Right, right. I think a really cool part about that, as you guys might notice in chat, is that we don't just limit it to our community because we know some of the work that we're doing can have a broader reach and broader impact. And obviously, we know that epilepsy isn't the only thing that defines our audience, too. And so that's really at the top of mind, which is really cool with our advocacy work. So, how does somebody get into advocacy work? So, as a job, so maybe you can outline your path for us and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. And there are a lot of different paths to get to this type of job. I personally went to law school, one of those people that wanted to pile on as much debt as I could, and I really succeeded at that.
Oh,
Uh,
that's too real. That's too real.
Yep. So I graduated law school in '06. I was always more, I didn't want to go work at a big firm or anything. I wanted to do more public interest work. So my first job out of law school was at a child welfare organization, actually. And it was kind of just a general government affairs, entry level position. But it was really cool because I, got to learn the ropes when it comes to like how the Hill actually works and how policy actually advances in Congress. I had some really great bosses and mentors, who'd been in the field for 20, 30 years. And in that was way back. In that time frame is actually when Congress was kind of vamping up the conversations around comprehensive healthcare reform in our country for like the millionth time, but the one that actually led to passage of the Affordable Care Act. So essentially, when I was there, they needed someone to focus more on healthcare. And this is a life lesson in like, grab opportunities when they come your way. So I started learning healthcare policy kind of in real time, but really just grabbed onto it and loved it. It was, it's truly obviously an issue that impacts everyone, whether you're, healthy or have a diagnosis of whatever type. You never know what's around the corner when it comes to your health. So I really got interested in it. I moved over to the National MS Society, multiple sclerosis in 2009, wanting to get more of that niche health policy and government relations experience. I ended up being with MS Society for 9 years. It's an amazing organization. My primary role there was just being up on the Hill, representing the needs of people with MS and the issues that they care about. So essentially I was a lobbyist for the MS community. And then I moved over to EF a little over 3 years ago in order to kind of just take that next step in my career, not just do the GR policy work, but kind of manage an entire advocacy team. which is honestly a little scary at first, but it's been super fun. The Epilepsy Foundation has always had a really strong rooting in advocacy, which I think we'll touch on a few times during the session. But it's been really fun, I feel like, to take, EF's advocacy kind of to the next level. We're really trying to be less reactive when we hear about things and be more proactive and strategic about the issues that we work on. In the past few years, we've really built out a few additional advocacy volunteer roles. So if people want to get, engaged in a more meaningful way, they have those options now, which I think is really exciting. So it's been great. But again, that was my path. People in government relations policy field, other like masters in public health, masters in public administration, public policy, those are typically the types of educational paths that get people to this place.
Got it. Okay. So obviously you have a unique perspective, just kind of working in what you've done previously and now where you're at today. Can you give us a little bit of a preview of kind of what it's like behind the scenes? So obviously we've seen like what it is to be in advocacy
Yeah,
and what you more generally do, but what is it like? Like more of like on a day to day?
sure. There is no standard day. You wake up when you work in politics and you literally never know what your day is going to bring, which I find very exciting. I think the most fun part for me and most of us is being up on Capitol Hill. Which unfortunately we can't do these days because of COVID, but at some point it will come back. But I actually grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. And politics has definitely changed a lot. Like, unfortunately, the headlines are true. Things are more divisive now.
Yeah.
But there's really still something, at least to me, magical about being up on the Hill. There's so much power. It's where decisions are made. And when you're up there, having conversations with these decision makers, even if it's their staff, you really feel like you're part of the action. It's just really exciting. There'd be some days when I would have like 8 to 10 Hill meetings in a day. So you're running around, meeting with a Republican and then a Democrat. You're going back and forth between the House and Senate. And Hill meetings can seem intimidating, but honestly, once any of you would ever do one, even as a constituent, like they're really just a conversation. You are really just there to educate about, in this case, if you live with epilepsy, what that's like, what's important to you, what issues you care about. So I think that's a really important takeaway, that I hope to relay to all of you, that advocacy can seem very intimidating, but it's really just about sharing your story and getting your message across. And then just there are a lot of cool moments in my history, and I'm sure there will be more, but the cooler things were like, many years ago, just walking down the hall to a committee hearing, and I look over, I see kind of an old, shorter man. I'm like, oh my God, that's Ted Kennedy.
Wow.
Like 3 feet from him, or just the big names, Bernie Sanders, Paul Ryan, just seeing them a few feet away. It's just kind of fun. One year we had a meeting when Paul Ryan was speaker. We had a constituent, so with MS, when I was with MS Society, who met with his staff. So they got to take us out on the speaker's balcony of the Capitol building, which is just beautiful. You're like overlooking the whole National Mall. You get to see the monument in the distance. And then Paul Ryan, like with a media frenzy around him, like just happened to pass right by us. So just fun stuff like that. And then, just some of the fly-ins when we bring in, when it comes to the foundation, at least, every year in normal times, we bring people living with epilepsy to DC and train them on how to be an advocate and take them up to the Hill. Of everything, honestly, the big names aside and all the coolness, those are the most memorable moments because, I've been in countless meetings where someone, just they're just sharing very personal aspects of their life, and they just have these moments where you can tell it's hit them, like just how meaningful what they're doing is, and that they're having an impact. And even if it's just educating, a staff person who didn't know anything about epilepsy, like that's a big deal. And then there are obviously even bigger moments when they manage to get their member of Congress to co-sponsor a bill we care about, or vote the way that we hope they will vote. So it's definitely a very fun and exciting program for everyone.
Very rewarding. Yeah. And it's cool that you're able to hear the stories, work with these people firsthand, and then also affect change, and see the change that you're making. So that's something that in nonprofit work, you don't always necessarily see.
Yeah.
So that is a really cool perspective. Um, so I guess kind of going back to basics. So I think people, when they think about advocacy, they really just think about the politics of it all. And maybe their view is a little bit convoluted. I remember like I worked at nonprofits before, so this is pretty common where there's like an alert or something that could be affect our population. So then they send you a script to call your local representative. So the basics people kind of see, but maybe we can kind of take a step back and kind of just define what it means and kind of then put it back in the context of the Epilepsy Foundation. So, what is advocacy kind of more generally?
Yeah, great question. So I would define it kind of like you were saying, on like a very high level and broad level. So to me, advocacy is about pushing for change. And that can take a variety of forms. It can be on an individual level, like I live with epilepsy and I know there are laws about like whether I should disclose that to my employer and like the repercussions of doing that. Maybe someone got fired and they think it was somewhat related to their having disclosed epilepsy and like needing to navigate that situation. So it can be a very individual level, but like figuring out information and being able to use that information in order to advocate for yourself and navigate through that. And then there's also like more systemic advocacy, like that high level change that you're pushing for. And the foundation does both. I mentioned our legal defense fund. That is more on like the individual advocacy level. So we fortunately have that, which honestly is like, I think one of the coolest things the foundation
So cool.
does, because it just has like literally a daily impact on helping people navigate really, really stressful, challenging situations. And then on the systemic side, that's a lot of what other parts of my team do in terms of, identifying a problem that our community is facing, like our drugs are too expensive, or, like my insurance company told me I have to like try these other drugs that my doctor didn't prescribe before I can go on the one that my doctor, is most effective for me. So identifying the problem and a solution, and then pushing for big changes like within, like Medicare, private insurance, to like help a lot of people at once. So that's just another neat thing about advocacy. You can kind of tackle it at different levels. And by doing that, you're definitely seeing incremental changes day to day. But then when you get those big systemic changes, which don't happen every day,
No, yeah.
but it's really exciting because, it's going to impact a lot of people.
Right, right. That's a great overview. Hopefully that clarifies it for anybody that's watching too. And I did put a link into Legal Defense Fund because I agree that's probably one of the coolest things that we do, where it's like immediate help that you're gonna receive with that. So definitely take a peek if any of that applies to you or that could help somebody that you love. So obviously now in the context of the Epilepsy Foundation, what is it that we advocate for?
Yeah, so we a lot, but I try to organize it. We kind of call them our 4 buckets. So we have a lot of issues related to access to affordable comprehensive health coverage. And I'll dig into each of these a little bit, but access to care, disability rights, public health and education, and research and innovation. And that's, again, just mostly for organizational purposes, because if I just tried to list out all the issues we worked on, it'd be overwhelming.
Right.
But to give like a few examples, so like within access to care, making sure that people have coverage in the first place and that coverage is affordable for them. So for instance, right now in the big reconciliation package that Congress is working on, we've been working on a few provisions in there with other patient organizations that would, for instance, expand some subsidies for people to buy certain types of health insurance. And then also within access to care, access to treatment. So, 2/3 of people with epilepsy are able to achieve seizure control with existing treatments. Right. But within that space, it's still pretty complicated. Like, we know that there's no one size fits all therapy. So one of the issues we advocate for is access to the full range of treatments so that each person with epilepsy and their provider can, identify and remain on the treatment that works best for them. And that's all about insurance coverage, right? Trying to make sure that payers are covering a lot of the epilepsy drugs and not limiting it to like one or two. Timely access to medications is super important because delays obviously increase risk for breakthrough seizures. Right. So there are some insurance practices that we don't love. One is called step therapy. That's the one where I mentioned it before, but if your doctor prescribes a medication, but your insurer says, no, actually you have to try this other one, or you have to try like 3 other ones before you can go on the one that your doctor prescribed.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's all about cost, right, from their perspective. But
trying to like incrementally get you up to
yeah, like essentially put you on cheaper drugs. But we try to educate about that doesn't work for people with epilepsy, and they in fact really need to be on the one that their doctor prescribes.
Really
so so reforms through policy that would give people exceptions to step therapy practices. Like, for instance, if you have been stable on a treatment, being able to show that to your insurer and being able to go straight to the medication that works best for you. And then we also, 2/3 of people are able to achieve seizure control with existing treatments, but at least 1/3 who still don't have seizure control. We know that many in our community have turned to medical cannabis. So that is also an issue that we do a lot of advocacy around, both access to safe and legal medical cannabis. Obviously, of course, we only support it when you're doing it in strong collaboration with your healthcare provider and making sure that you're checking in with them. You're not going, off other treatments without their advice. That's very, very important. So again, safe and legal access to medical cannabis, which fortunately in most states is available now. Right. Disability rights, protection of and building on the Americans with Disabilities Act. So a neat example is we're working on a bill in Congress that is looking more at air travel and how to make that more accessible for people with disabilities.
So what does that look like to make it more accessible?
A lot of things, and only some of them honestly touch the epilepsy community. This is a bill we work on with the broader disability community. But for instance, we've all been on planes, and how small are airplane bathrooms?
Oh my God.
Those are not accessible.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so working with airplane manufacturers to move towards a place where all airplanes will have an accessible laboratory. That's actually in the works. It's unfortunately far too down the pipe because of the time frame it takes to design and manufacture planes, but that is something we've been working on. People who, use a wheelchair, getting out of the wheelchair on the one that they used to take you down the tiny narrow airplane, whatever that's called, and get you in your seat. But so the possibility, for instance, of wheelchair restraint systems in airplanes so that people could literally wheel in on their
To the
chair and
spot.
just be kind of locked in. Yeah. Rather than
Nice.
have to do all those transfers, which honestly some people get pretty injured because the in plane seats are so small and the
Right.
transfers are very difficult and stuff. So
Right.
yeah, pretty neat bill. And then another one more in the public health and education space. So this one is a super top priority for the Epilepsy Foundation. It's our Seizure Safe Schools initiative.
Awesome. Yes.
Um, so this, I never know like how much time I have. I'll try to tell the story quickly because it's really neat.
Yeah.
So one of our, I mentioned we bring people with epilepsy to DC and take them up to the Hill, train them how to be advocates. A few years ago, a teenager named Lindsay Crump from Kentucky came to that conference and did all the Hill stuff. But then Lindsay went back to her home state of Kentucky, and our teens are supposed to do a year of service where they do a few advocacy activities. We like to make sure you don't just come to DC, go home and never do anything advocacy related again, that you stay engaged, stay connected to your elected officials. So Lindsay essentially like took the year of service and knocked it out of the ballpark. She wanted to do, having faced some things in her own school, she wanted to make schools a safer and more comfortable environment for students with epilepsy. We give all credit to her. This was her idea. But she worked with her state legislature and basically got a bill passed within 1 or 2 sessions. But the bill, it does a few things. It requires school personnel to have seizure recognition and seizure first aid training. It requires every student with epilepsy to have a seizure action plan on file so schools know how to appropriately respond to each individual. It requires administration of FDA-approved therapies in the school setting. That was mostly to get at rescue therapies, which can be kind of challenging. So the foundation, after Lindsay's huge success and Epilepsy Foundation of Kentucky.
What state was that in? Oh, Kentucky.
Kentucky,
Okay.
Yeah. EF of Kentuckiana was great working with her. And then we took that bill and turned it into what's called a model bill and started pushing it around the country. So we have a nationwide initiative to get this seizure safe schools bill passed in all states in DC. We've seen incredible progress. We've had 12 states pass the bill. And that's just in three years.
Amazing.
And one of those years was COVID.
Yeah.
Well, if COVID is still a thing, but there was, 2020 state legislatures like literally weren't doing anything other than COVID related policy. So we essentially lost a year, but
still
this year, 2021, we came back super strong and had 7 new states pass the bill for a total of 12. So that's been a really fun one. Again, like when you talk about policy, it's like you get these things enacted and you know that they'll affect people down the road, but this is one that's a little more tangible. The trainings start happening right away. I think it just helps students and families know that they'll be better supported in the school environment. So it's really fun.
I love that. And we actually had LaQuisa on. And so she told us the story about how Texas went and we had to ensure that we could provide the training and how it was a huge lift to get it all up and running so that it didn't crash the system.
Yep.
Because there are a lot of kids and a lot of teachers in Texas.
Texas is a big state.
Yeah, so it's cool. It's like full circle, you guys. Everything that we're doing is interconnected. It all has a strategic purpose and a purpose that's really going to help our community, which is so cool. So we actually had a question in chat, and I know we're going to be talking about this later, but I'm not sure how long Justin can stay here. But Justin's asking, can you please touch on how an average person can help with advocacy? And he also thanks you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. Great question. The first thing we recommend people to do is we have an advocacy network, basically, an online network. And if you sign up for this, you'll start getting EF's monthly advocacy newsletter, the Capital Circuit, which is interesting. You'll just kind of stay up to date on all the types
great.
of issues
Yeah. If
I'm
you're
talking
interested in
about.
advocacy or learning, I recommend that for sure. I get it too.
Yeah. Yeah, but even the more fun part is we will also send you what we call action alerts. So when a bill or something is moving in your state or in Congress, we'll send you an action alert and it tells you what the situation is, like describes what we're working on. And then with a few clicks of a button, you can, enter your address, which obviously impacts who your elected officials are. And through our system, send emails off to your elected officials about this bill, and also be able to tailor it, add a paragraph or two about why it's important to you. That's really important. So that's like kind of the first step of advocacy if you just want to stay informed.
And it's super easy. I think I want to emphasize this. Like, it seems a little daunting again, like how Laura was talking about going on the hill and talking to these representatives and people who speak with thousands of people, millions of people in their lifetime. It's so easy to do it through the system because it's just a template. And even when you have to make a phone call, these people know expect these kind of calls, right? It's pretty easy to follow the script and they'll take your message and then you'll go. So it's not like they're gonna sit there and grill you and ask you everything. As long as you hit those talking points that are provided to you, it's pretty straightforward, and this is something that they deal with often.
Yeah. Thanks for the endorsement, Monique.
Yeah. I remember the first time I did that I used to work for the Lung Association, and I was like, oh my, and I went to our advocacy person. I was like, Donna, like, what does this all entail? And she's like, here, just watch me. And I watched her, and it was like 3 minutes, like she sent the email and then she did a quick phone call. Like it was so easy. And so I remember being like, oh wow, I could have been doing this the whole time, but I was like really kind of intimidated by it. So I think that is such an easy way that you can do it. We all have a phone. All of it, most of us have email, I would say, that you're pretty active on. And we provide the system. So that's a really easy way to get involved. Yeah, of course. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, she'll keep going. Sorry, I interrupted her, but
no, that's all right. So that's kind of first step. And then, understanding everyone has different interests in terms of like how deeply they want to get involved, like how much time they have. We realize everyone's lives are super busy. But we do have, we've built out some more specific advocacy roles that allow for deeper engagement if that's something you're interested in. I mentioned our teen program, which is what Lindsay Crunk, the initiator of Seizure Safe Schools, was part of. I don't know if there are teens out there today, but we do have a teen program that you can apply for. And again, that allows the teens to come in normal times to DC, get trained on how to be an advocate, how to share your story and connect it to the issues that we're working on. And then the foundation, we take everyone up to Capitol Hill and you have meetings with both your US senators and your US representatives, which again, we provide the training for. We adequately prepare everyone to help ease nerves. So, if you haven't done that before. And then this next program is one we started about a year ago, recognizing that teens grow up and, we don't want to lose them if they want to stay engaged in advocacy. And then there are obviously a lot of adults out there who might not have been part of our teen program, but want to do more. So we started a program that we call our Epilepsy Advocacy Champions. So this is very complementary to the teen program, basically for adults. So you can apply to be an epilepsy advocacy champion. And if you are, if you're enrolled in the program, we do a monthly training with you about either important skills on how to be a good advocate. So again, sharing your story, how to strengthen relationships with elected officials and their staff, how the political process works, like, the
Right.
Bill on Capitol Hill textbook version versus like what happens in reality. And then we also give our champions a monthly advocacy activity. So you're not just like learning the skills, you're putting those into practice. So an example on an activity would be, okay, this month, Congress is again working on that big reconciliation package, the one you've seen in the news that used to be 3.5 trillion. Now it's like 1.5 trillion.
Yeah, lots of changes.
And there are a lot of parts of that the Epilepsy Foundation has been working on related to affordability of coverage, as I mentioned, the paid leave provisions we've been working on and advocating for. There's a big component around Medicaid coming community-based services. There's a provision that would cap consumers' out-of-pocket expenses in Medicare Part D, which is the prescription drug benefit. So our champions over the last few months, we've been activating them around that package. So, this month we're focusing on the Medicare Part D out-of-pocket cap. Reach out to your members of Congress and talk to them about why that's important to you. And we want to provide all the resources we can to make that manageable for people. So we give talking points, we give draft language that our volunteers are always welcome to personalize. But again, we're just trying to make the lift as easy as possible. So there are a lot of ways. Again, our network, kind of step one. And then we have both the teen and the champion program if people are looking for a deeper level of engagement.
That's really great info. I was actually just hopping on our Discord because you guys have a Discord, right? Where you go
For
over.
champions, yeah.
Yes. So for those of you in our chat, obviously streamers, we all know Discord. Discord is a very thing we use in everyday life to promote our streams. A lot of us have our own Discord communities. So this would just be an additional Discord community that you'd be able to join as well if you were admitted, and you'd be able to get those talking points and information too and connect with the staff. So another accessible way to get more involved with advocacy kind of where you are. Okay, so that was really a great overview of what we all do in the advocacy space. It's a lot, obviously. How many people are on your team?
We've been a little in transition with our team, but fully staffed for 6.
Yeah. So you guys, the theme continues: small but mighty at the Epilepsy Foundation. We all really do a ton of roles, and we all are really passionate about what we do because we wouldn't be able to work as much as we do if we weren't. It'd be very draining. But at the end of the day, I mean, clearly based on this conversation alone, you guys know that we have your best interests, and we're really putting our best foot forward to ensure that we're able to serve our community. And so I would love for you also to talk about the ways that we've been able to make an impact because I get really excited when I first learned about this, especially with ADA. And I'll just hand it over to Laura, and she can talk to you about some of our great successes and again working in those coalitions with other partners too to affect change.
Yeah, so I'm gonna like go back in history for a second, and then I'll talk about some current ones. But I just want to make clear how fundamental advocacy is to the Epilepsy Foundation. Like we have a super strong history of being at the table when it comes to like passing really, really big pieces of legislation. So for instance, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So Tony Quello, who until recently was on the foundation's national board. If you don't know Tony's name, Tony is a former member of Congress. He lives with epilepsy himself, and he was actually the bill sponsor of the original Americans with Disabilities Act. Big deal. Having epilepsy, the foundation worked with Tony a lot over the years and still does. And just some interesting history there. The original ADA was passed, the big provisions were, making sure that there were a lot of more protected rights for people with disabilities in employment and public accommodations and a few other, just really big parts of life. But the ADA passed, and then something not I think a lot of people in the general public know, ended up being a case that went up to the Supreme Court about the definition of disability.
Right.
So there's actually a question of whether people with like more episodic conditions, such as epilepsy, right? I mean, depending on your seizure frequency, et cetera, or multiple sclerosis, for instance, like you have in MS, you kind of have these flare-ups, it's not like your symptoms are super active every day. So there's a question of, do people with more episodic conditions, do they qualify under the definition of disability, and are the rights in this huge law actually guaranteed to them? Fortunately, the Supreme Court, thought that they were encompassed in that law, but basically Congress had to go back and kind of clarify some of that through what's known as the ADA Amendments Act. And when Tony tells the story way better, because to paraphrase him, he's like, I mean, I have epilepsy and I wrote the law. Why would I not make it to like include myself? Like, that's just crazy. Yep. So again, EF was like a huge leader in that Amendments Act process, like making sure that episodic conditions like epilepsy were encompassed in that definition. And that's how, again, our legal defense fund today, the way that we can ensure those rights to our community is because of that. So that, it's just really cool. But more kind of current or recent examples of success that we've had in advocacy. So one was, well, I'll start with Seizure Safe Schools, which we already talked about. I mean, managing to get 12 states to pass that law in 3/2 years, depending on how you look at it. It's just really amazing. We expect to have like 15 to 20 states working on that bill next year. State legislatures will really, they really go fast out of the gate come January. So our worlds will get pretty crazy then. Another issue is some of the policy titles are kind of wonky. So it's called 6 protected classes. So what this is, it's a policy in Medicare, which is obviously a government-run healthcare program. We know that about 1 million people with epilepsy rely on Medicare for their health coverage and prescription drug coverage. Medicare Part D, which again, the prescription drug benefit, in our opinion, kind of has the gold standard when it comes to drug coverage. Medicare Part D plans, this 6 protected classes policy says that prescription drug plans have to cover all or substantially all anti-seizure medications. So again, to the point of like, there's no one size fits all therapy, we want coverage of as many of them as we can so that our community has access to the drug and for drugs that work for them. So over the years though, so like, conceptually that makes sense, right? But from a payer standpoint, covering a lot of drugs is like a lot and can be, kind of expensive. So there have been significant threats to that policy over the years. Various administrations have put out rules that would really pull back the 6 protected classes, do things like that step therapy issue I was talking about, even within the protected classes, even if someone was stable on a medication, if they switch plans, we can still force them to go through step therapy and have to try medications that we know don't work well for them. So those were huge threats over the years, and through EF's advocacy and other organizations that represent the other protected classes, every time we have managed to have the administration pull their proposals back, which that's a big deal because when the administration puts something out, they want to do it. But through email campaigns and countless meetings with the Hill, our advocates helped the administration realize, like, okay, that's actually really not a good idea, and we need to pull this back.
Oh, good. Okay.
Those have been really neat. And then another last one I'll touch on is more of a funding thing. So some of the policies we work on are like more about programs and how they work, but Congress every year also obviously works on the federal budget, and there are a lot of parts of the federal budget that have impact for our community. Big things like funding for the National Institutes of Health. Obviously, that's really important.
Yep.
Funding for the Food and Drug Administration. And then there are a few more epilepsy-specific programs, like the Centers for Disease Control actually has an epilepsy-specific program that has a lot of activities within it. Most of them are around helping improve access to care for people with epilepsy. Obviously, more public health activities like awareness and education. The trainings that the foundation does, would also fall in this bucket. So every year, as Congress works on the federal budget, we have to be up on the Hill advocating for the programs that impact our community. So when it comes to the CDC epilepsy program, for instance, we have been advocating for increases the past few years. We've been successful in getting $1 million increases for the CDC epilepsy program each of the last 2 fiscal years. And then in the current budget that Congress is working on, both chambers, they're not done the budget yet, but both chambers as of now have recommended a $2.5 million increase for the CDC program. So crossed, in the final spending bill, we'll see an even bigger increase than we've got in the last 2 years. But again, that is all credit to our advocates. It's an issue that during our advocacy conferences and our Capitol Hill days that our teens and adult champions talk to their members of Congress about, and why it's so important. So again, just proof that, those meetings matter, and just being present before elected officials and talking about epilepsy and what's important to our community. If we weren't doing that,
right,
honestly, we'd be off their radar and they might forget about us. So
right, because there's so many issues that are brought forth to them that they have to prioritize. Yeah.
Countless. So, we're here to help organize it as staff, but without, people in the community who are willing to be advocates and out there sharing their stories, we would not be as successful as we are.
Right. Wow. You guys see, we are affecting change together. I mean, we can't do it without you guys. We are, like Laura said, they're a team of 6. So meeting with every single elected official, calling, emailing all the time is just not possible. So we need volunteers. We need your support. And so if you are interested in joining our advocacy programs, either if you're a teen, if you're an adult, we definitely have some different ways that you can get involved more on a deeper level, but also too, if you're willing to just send a quick email, if you're willing to make a quick call, please sign up for our alerts. Again, I put those in the chat so you can take a peek at any time and sign up. I will follow up in Discord with some more information about this. I think this is a really easy one, especially considering there is also an advocacy Discord if you're able to join and help activate in this way. I know Lily said that she actually used our email system to email her local representative, and she talked about in chat how easy it was. She just had to put in her address, and that was it. So, I mean, clearly our community is already, in touch with this. So I'm going to definitely follow up and share more information. But if anybody has any questions here as well, feel free to pop them in the chat. I know we're getting close to the end of our time today with Laura. But feel free to raise any questions, or if also in follow up to this conversation, DM me in Discord or on here, and I'm happy to connect you. Um, so I'm trying to go back to what we were all talking about. You talked about our accomplishments. Maybe do you mind just kind of breaking down again the ways to get involved quick, and then I can be sure to like maybe clip this later as well?
Yeah, yes, for sure. So again, first step we recommend is joining our online advocacy network, which we call Speak Up, Speak Out. So there's a bit.ly, hopefully Monique can put it in the chat. It's a quick, easy sign up, your name, your address is important because again, that helps determine who your elected officials are. You'll get our newsletter every month and our action alerts when important policies are moving either in Congress or in your state legislature. And then if you want or interested in a deeper level of engagement, we have our teen program if you're under 18. And then for adults, we have our Epilepsy Advocacy Champions, which you do need to apply to be part of that program. But if you're a champion, we do monthly trainings with our champions to help build advocacy skills, how to share your story, how to strengthen relationships with elected officials, what the political process is like in reality. And then we also give our champions a monthly advocacy activity, which helps them, again, just kind of put their skills into action. And then by that consistent, monthly activity with their members of Congress, they're just staying present, before the elected officials, strengthening the relationship and also kind of continuously advancing the policy that we care about. And yeah, I should have noted through all that, champions are really federally focused. So it mostly is about, getting to know your members of Congress and their staff.
Right.
Sometimes, we activate champions on state level issues, but again, mostly federally focused. So,
Right,
yeah.
because we do have our local affiliates and our local
Mhm.
chapters, if you will, that also help activate locally.
Yeah,
So,
they do a great job.
in addition to helping with more federal general priorities, you're also able to work on the local level too with your state. So that's more information I'm also happy to provide to connect anybody with the appropriate staff member that we have here if you're interested. So let me know, but I'm definitely going to clip that and what you all said, the different ways to get involved. Um, Curious question, kind of off the track a little bit. Do you show Schoolhouse of Rock when you tell people how a bill gets passed?
Yeah, we kind of do the this is what you learn in school, and a
Yeah,
lot of it's true, but then also these are some things again
this is how
about
it
how
actually
it
works.
is more in the real world. Yeah, but it's the steps are generally accurate. I'd say, one of the biggest changes that even we as people who've been in the field for a long time are getting used to is Congress, especially. I mean, they tend to legislate now with these ginormous packages.
Yes.
Congress used to advance smaller bills a lot more regularly. Um, but now again, it's 2 or 3 big packages a year. So, whatever you're working on, you're trying to get it into that package. And, by adding a lot of things together, that increases the price tag, right? I mean, we're seeing that with the current package. So it gets tough because there's so much that needs to get done, but kind of only so many vehicles to move stuff. So that's kind of an interesting, again, real life thing that we're all still getting used to.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never thought of it that way, but I would definitely say in my recent memory, like 5 to 10 years, it feels like it's all these all or nothing type
Yeah,
of strategies. But
it's a lot of pressure.
yeah, I think overall, you guys, I think the really big takeaway too is like it is obviously it's very easy to get involved, but this also isn't necessarily political, right? You are working with politicians and people that, but these are the people that are going to be able to affect change to help our community. So it doesn't really matter where you lie. This all of our interests are served by what we're doing here at the Epilepsy Foundation. We're not taking a stand on other pieces. We're just trying to serve our community. So I know it can seem daunting, or if you don't want to be involved in politics or what have you, advocacy and politics aren't necessarily I can't even think of the word right now, but it's not the same, right? You're not saying I stand for this, I stand for this, and it's not going to get contentious in that way. This is really just advocating for making sure that our communities are getting the support they need, there's accessibility, and all that we can do. And so, with our last kind of note that I'd like to touch on, I'd love to talk
Yeah.
to you more about accessibility. So, some of you may already know because I've already talked about it too. You know, that is obviously a priority or stream for epilepsy. It also is a priority for the Epilepsy Foundation more generally. We have evolved and worked with different partners, including like TikTok and Twitter, to help make these spaces where we meet and we join as a community more safe, especially those with photosensitivity triggers, sound triggers, what have you. And so one thing really cool that we are working on, and I'd love for you to talk about, Laura, is the publication for epilepsy. And maybe if you can just touch on that and what that could mean, and I can also obviously bring it back to streaming and game development.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I know this is a topic that comes up. Well, first of all, accessibility has a lot of components
Yes,
to
it
it
does.
too, right?
That's
You
good.
have physical accessibility, people with cognitive impairments, only some of these cross into the epilepsy space, but we work on accessibility in the broadest definition possible. But an important part of accessibility for the epilepsy community is related to photosensitive epilepsy, which I know you all have talked about some, but just the basics are, about 3% of people with epilepsy, exposure to flashing lights at certain intensities and to certain visual patterns can trigger seizures. It's more common in photosensitive epilepsy is more common in children and adolescents. And again, we like to make sure, not all TVs, not all video games, not all computer monitors will trigger seizures. It's a lot of different factors that need to align, including frequency of flash, brightness, contrast, distance between the viewer and the light source. So again, there's a lot of complexities to photosensitive epilepsy, but obviously for the 3% of our community that it impacts, it's very important, and we want to try to avoid obviously triggering seizures as much as we can. So EF, the foundation, back in, again, far predating me, like 2004, 2005, convened a group of experts to really dig into photosensitive epilepsy, the science related to all of it, which like far surpasses my knowledge base. But back then in 2005, this foundation convened group published both a literature review and a consensus paper. And again, it's a lot about like the science of all of this, like exactly what frequencies and exactly what distance, is more prone to trigger seizures. And then the consensus part was like, given all that, what are some recommendations that we as experts put out to our community about this topic. So we as the foundation, we get a lot of questions like video game producers, like I'm making this game, I want to make sure it doesn't, trigger seizures in people with photosensitive epilepsy, or like streaming companies or movie production companies. And we hugely appreciate that this is even on their radar, that they're aware that this is a challenge and that they want to try to avoid harming our community. So it's great. But we as the foundation, see our role as an information source. Like we can't necessarily, look at this clip and say, yes, that will trigger a seizure. No, that one won't. Right. But we want to give the people who are making these things or producing these things the information that they need to develop the product, whatever it is, in a way that's safe for our community. So realizing that 2005 was quite a while ago, we did reconvene a group of experts a year ago. They have been diligently working, and it's actually an international group. There are some experts who live outside of the US. So they've been diligently working on updating a paper around the science of photosensitive epilepsy. And we're in the process of, submitting that for publication. I don't work on a lot of publications, so I honestly don't know, exactly when it's going to be approved and come out. But we're very excited to that we will have an updated paper on this topic. And then the group is also going to work on some educational material to that, like for different audiences and different levels of knowledge, for providers and consumers. So stay tuned. There's a lot coming. I can't tell you exactly when, but again, this is something we get a lot of questions about. So we want to be able to provide the most accurate and current information in order to best protect our community.
Yeah, and obviously then this is a resource that we're going to be able to give to those game development companies, those movie production, like whatever it is, we're going to be able to provide this. And also too, like I'm sure some of you have Disney Plus, like they have now the trigger warnings, photosensitive warning on it. So even if it's just simply, if it is going to trigger somebody potentially, putting that warning on also. And again, that is what increasing accessibility is about, and this space in the photosensitive space, and how it can also impact what we do with our streaming. A lot of you put trigger warnings on your streams, but that isn't always the case, right? There are plenty of people that aren't even aware that maybe putting a trigger warning could help with the community. So having this resource will arm us with the tools that we need and the information we need to go to Twitch, to go to these other platforms where we are now, and say, hey, this is what we've found. This is what our experts found. Is this something that we can implement and give the stats to and really speak to, not just anecdotally? So, really excited for that because we also have some other conversations going on, more internally, more inside baseball. I won't go into that until we have more of an announcements and things that we can announce with you guys about the partnerships with that. So it's really kind of all-encompassing advocacy. There really isn't a limit, unfortunately for Laura and her work-life balance. Um, but if you guys have any questions, now's the time to ask. I know we have 2 more minutes with Laura. Laura, is there anything else you'd want to add at the end of this? I know you talked about how people can get involved, what have you. Is there any kind of closing thoughts that you kind of want to finish our chat with today?
Yeah, just really reiterating that the more people we have involved in advocacy and being willing to share their stories and talk to elected officials, the better. We have that Speak Up, Speak Out network is about 50,000 strong, which is amazing. But every person we add matters. You might reside in a district of like a really important member of Congress who's making really important decisions. So the more people we have being willing to do that, the more impactful we will be. So we really hope you all consider getting involved.
Yeah, and it really is, however much time that you can give, right? That's the great part
Yeah.
about this. It's like an a la carte menu of advocacy where
Mhm.
you can affect change, which is really important. And I really am proud of the work that we do at the Epilepsy Foundation overall. Obviously, I've been bringing you guys a bunch of different chats and discussions these past couple months, but this is a really important one that really makes the change, and that we're able to help people and enact these bills, enact these procedures and things to get them in place to help our communities. So, if you guys are interested, the link is still in chat. Sign up, get involved, speak up, speak out, teen speak up, all of our different programs that we offer through our advocacy network, and also too. As you all know, raising awareness, retweeting things that we're talking about that are our priorities that we're hoping people will take action on. Follow us on our socials so that you can do that, so you can raise awareness and also act when the time comes to act. So, Laura, I want to thank you again for being here
Yeah.
today. Third time's the charm. We made it.
Yep.
Thank you all for participating. I know this can be a pretty intense topic, but hopefully bringing Laura here today kind of help break it down in the context of what we're doing at the Epilepsy Foundation. Again, you guys, we are in the midst of Epilepsy Awareness Month. November is a big month for the Epilepsy Foundation, to serve the 3.4 million Americans that have epilepsy and 65 million worldwide that are affected. And this is our month to really take action and act in terms of raising awareness, doing our streaming, charity streaming for Game Over Epilepsy and what have you. If you weren't at the top of this chat, we are up to $9,000 raised for the Epilepsy Foundation, which is incredible this month, considering this is our second year doing this for Stream for Epilepsy. So if you want to get more involved in that way and help raise awareness, feel free to sign up. I'm putting the website on here. and chat. And then you also are welcome to join our Discord. Email me and I'll give you access. But if you guys have any questions about advocacy or anything that I can provide to connect you with Laura and her amazing team, please don't hesitate to reach out. And our next chat, for those of you who are going to be tuning in next week, we have one on Monday at 5 o'clock. It's actually rescheduling from Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking with Black Rose Angel. He has epilepsy, and so we're going to be talking about his experience with epilepsy. And then we have the next day, we are speaking with Kate Brocker, our lovely Kate Brocker, about wellness and epilepsy, which I think is really good timing around the holidays because sometimes it can be, holidays can be tough for many people. So without further ado, I think we're going to wrap it up today, guys. Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you again to Laura. And I look forward to our next chat as always. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.